What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Rooted in Resilience podcast. Today, we are joined by our friend, Danny Roddy. He's kind of like Ray Pete's apprentice and new chicken whisperer. So we're going to talk all about Danny's journey today, through his journey through raising chickens and some like big picture realizations of health along the way. So Danny, give us an update on your chicken sanctuary down in Mexico.
I mean, there's so much to talk about. I have about 15 laying chickens, two roosters, and I just got 15 more chicks, like literally just a few days ago. And so, by the way, it's really hanging here on the internet, so tell me if it's me or not. But just like obsessed with them. Like I think we share that. Like got a few, didn't expect to like really think much of it. Thought they'd be easy, which I was completely wrong about. Pretty much was thrown into the fire immediately. Like, so again, the number of things I did completely incorrect is a long list, but the chicks I got became ill almost instantaneously. So I had to figure out what was going wrong with them. And I, I've experienced lots of different types of stress in my life, but sick baby chicken stress is one of the worst things I've ever felt like in my entire life. And being kind of like almost helpless to try to help them, like just not having a lot of knowledge about it. And also exhausting the internet, realizing that nobody has any clue what they're talking about, like most of the time, for like basic chicken knowledge. And so I got chickens for the first time in August of last year. So I don't know how many months that is, but less than a year, learning tons, getting my first eggs, and really happy and see a bright future in it. Like I have big plans.
So, Danny, we now have 1,000 chickens.
Oh my God.
Life just got real.
Yeah.
I can resonate with all of those words. I simply just can't even put words to try to describe the feelings I get when I like watch chickens out in nature. Like it's so silly, but it is just like people say that they love doing people watching. No, chicken watching. These animals are just like so in tune with their innate wisdom and like they know what they want. And it's just they operate on their instincts. It's just so fun.
Yeah, I completely agree. Again, you're speaking my inner monologue. I could just watch them all day. Their culture is so interesting. Like, for example, I didn't have a rooster till fairly recently, and the chickens, of course, were not laying in the lay box in the beginning, and so the rooster would go like help the hen figure out where to lay, and like sit in the spot that it was going to lay the egg in. Like the first time, the noises that the hen was emitting the first time when she was about to lay an egg, like I witnessed the whole thing and was just in a trance of like, oh my God, she's about to lay her first egg. And again, it's there's something, maybe because I didn't grow up with them, there's something like you already said it, but kind of like magical about them or something. I don't know. There's something completely different about them that I've never kind of like seen in any other animal. So I guess that's why they're so utterly like kind of dependent on you. And so I don't know. There's a confluence of things that makes them really interesting.
Sarah and I have shed a lot of tears from dead chickens around here.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Norma
Very
Jean.
traumatic. I have like a collection of more pet chickens that are like exotic, and the
We have like a flock of 1,000 out in the field, and then Sarah's now collecting these strange breed chickens.
I just love them. And so when I got to like over the past summer, I got like baby new ones, and they got to the age where they could go out and just be in the grass and forage around. And then we also have a guard dog, and the guard dog ate all three
because they're like
at different times. So I went through 3 traumatic weeks of losing just what I thought was the most incredible thing in this world. It hits you differently when you take care of them. And yeah, like you said, you sort of feel helpless. But I guess, they are wild in nature, and it just happens that way sometimes. You do what you can.
We were talking to Danny about this briefly before the call, and I think my biggest realization these last close to 2.5 years of owning chickens is just something like this, where you're able to interact with and just observe nature and like biology functioning as nature intended, it makes you realize you don't really matter that much, and so you care less about these silly stupid things. It has been so healing for me to be to raise animals. I think it's been a really important step in my journey.
Yeah, it's like, isn't it? It's so easy to get caught up in the health world or think that like that's the point to life or something, is to obsess about mechanisms and things like that. It's like, no, it's supposed to support your effort to like live your life. It's not supposed to be the point of your life. Is not supposed to be obsessing about nutrition and things like that. But so again, I'm very hesitant to sometimes this kind of talking that I'm doing right now is like framed in like a nutrition nihilism where nothing matters. And so I don't think that. I do think things do matter. But and then when you're in the thick of it, like you're sick, obviously you can't think about anything other than healing yourself and kind of, or getting to a point where you feel better and you can move past it. And but yeah, I think it's nutrition becomes a hobby to a lot of people, and and like we can probably all say together, it's a extremely toxic hobby, and it's not going to be fulfilling or make you happy in, I would guess, in any way. It hasn't done that to me, and especially in the nutrition space. And that vitamin D thing was really like why I gotta get out of here. Like, this is complete insanity, and it will make you crazy interacting with it. And so again, thankfully, being on this property and doing other stuff kind of collided at that same time. But again, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know how unsatisfying it is until you get out of it and you start raising chickens, and you realize how much better you feel when you do that.
I think we all agree health matters and what you do day to day matters. But once you kind of dial down these like basic fundamental principles, having something in life to do so that you can't fixate on health is vital.
I think that's even important though when you are going through healing too, because like you said, nutrition can be a very toxic hobby. And so if that's all you're focused on and you have nothing else going through your brain, that's really not going to be good for your overall health. And so, yeah, in a way, just finding something else to care about and to be fascinated with and to learn more about is probably one of the most important things right up there with nutrition in healing.
Couldn't agree more. I think anything in the digital realm is likely to be some level of toxicity. And so the things I've kind of grown up seeing men, maybe my age or younger or a little bit older, all attracted to is like internet theology, internet nutrition, or internet like philosophy. And don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm saying there's no merit to investigating any of those things, but I think they have like large internet cultures that are pretty much as toxic as nutrition. And I think doing something in the physical space is going to be of magnitude more rewarding than to do anything on the internet. And so again, it's kind of sad it took me 38 years to figure that out, but that's how long it took. So.
But like I feel like in society, they kind of create this culture where you only learn new skills when you're young. And then once you reach a certain age, you don't need to do these other skills. Someone else can take care of that for you. Stay in your lane. But I think that like learning new skills, even if you suck at it, like for example, us learning how to raise chickens, I want to learn how to like sew and knit and things like that. Don't be afraid to do these things when you're older because that like just improves health, distracts you from everything else going on. And I think that that's like a really missing piece of society. Like people specialize in one area, go to a job, retire, done, rather than just like constantly expanding boundaries and trying things.
Yeah, that's like one of Ray's heroes was Buckminster Fuller or Bucky Fuller, and he basically has a quote about how specialization is just like a complete error, and a person should have a multidisciplinary activities, and that's going to make you a more well-rounded, better person. Like I had like made a roost for the chickens, and somebody's like, "How did you gain those skills of making the roost?" And it's like, well, I have YouTube and I have a miter saw, and I just made it real fast. Like I don't have any skills in woodworking. You just do it, and you fuck up 1,000 times, and then you come up with something that's halfway decent. But
That yeah, I mean that is one benefit of the digital world is we do have YouTube. We have how-to videos.
100%.
Basically, you can learn to do anything online, and then I mean, that's going to grow new neural pathways. It's going to expand your just thought process and overall intelligence and wisdom. So I think that you say it took you 30 years to get to this, or, over 30 years to get to this point, but there's validity in that, and that you had to go through those struggles and, what everybody else might be going through right now to get to the place where you are now, to find like a happy medium with your baseline nutrition and all that stuff to then expand into different things and kind of grow as a person now.
100%. Yeah. It's again, I wish I had done this a long time ago, but better late than never, I
Yeah.
guess. Yeah. So it's yeah, but been a fun ride so far.
Cool.
All right, Danny. Kind of more structured question here. So, kind of taking a zoomed back, zoom in versus zoom back, zoom out view of your journey. What are some of your like big picture failures and realizations along the way?
Oh man. Well, I famously one time told my friend that I didn't. I know I just talked about not really getting into internet philosophy, but I told my friend one time in 2000, maybe 11 or 12, that I didn't really care about Ray's philosophy. I was only in it for like mechanisms and nutrition stuff, and I didn't realize how baked in all of that stuff was. And so, like, I really don't believe in like authoritarian point of view towards nutrition or helping people. Like, I talk to a lot more people than I used to. Like sometimes I'll talk to 10 or more people per day. And it's I think like if anybody benefits from talking about me, I think it's usually because we have a strong rapport or we had a good conversation. And it's not necessarily about me fixing them or anything like that. And so I just I think the person has the tools to like fix their own problems. And I just was completely oblivious to that for a long period of time. And so I thought they're paying me to fix them. I need to help them, And so maybe that
You're
whole
talking about like kind of the one-on-one people that you work with on Patreon?
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. So
Okay.
somebody will come to me and they'll say I have a problem with this or that, or and and so again, early on in my life, I just didn't understand that. Again, I thought they were paying me just like the doctor patient model. You're paying the doctor; they're going to fix you, and that's not how life works. That's not real. That's like nobody's ever sent me an email or called me and said, you know what, you solved my life problem. It's like always them doing a series of experiments and learning this little thing, then that leading to this other little thing, and them having the own tools to fix their own problems. And if I was in some way slightly related to that by having a good conversation with them, that's fantastic. But and so but again, I guess that authoritarian model I was completely wrong about early on in my journey. And what else? That's the thing that comes to my mind the most with that question.
Yeah, you kind of it sounds like you we work with a number of people in our course, and like you, we're not specifically solving or targeting a specific thing because honestly everyone is dealing with something a little bit differently.
Mhm.
Just presenting valuable resources and tools and helping people kind of get out of learned helplessness and getting out of this like confused, stuck, afraid, not going to do anything phase, and just kind of getting people to take action, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah, well, really well said. Just doing something, like starting somewhere, and I think that stress state, maybe it's the high cortisol or the high serotonin, can sometimes make a person think they need to do something perfect or something before they can do anything at all, and that is definitely immobilizing and not that helpful. So, uh, again, just doing something, trying to move forward instead of being locked in a position. But yeah, that's but also I can't remember if Ashley we talked about this last time, but I've talked to a lot of people that have revealed like serious things that have happened to them in their lifetime. And so if I was kind of like some of the other like health people in the health universe, it was like if they just followed my diet, they'd be good. It's like, oh, they have like horrific childhood trauma. You know what I mean? And so you'd have to be literally a psychopath to think like, well, if everybody just followed my diet or something, they'd all be okay. And it's just like things are too bad to think like that. Like too much bad stuff has happened to people. And so, and then Ray made a case that just living in the growing up in America was traumatic to people, So it's just like, The situation is really bad, but like you said, just doing something, starting somewhere, like you calculate your diet and it has high phosphorus, so you include some calcium in there or something like that. It's just something really low effort that could improve a person's health, like just starting somewhere to move ahead.
I think that's great. All right. So, Danny, living in Mexico, taking care of chickens, now that you've been in this pro-metabolic space for over a decade, and like you said, no one single diet is ever going to fix anything, and Dr. Ray Pete never gave any specific diet. It's what people have just said. So what does eating look for you these days after being in the space for so long? What's a typical day?
Yeah, so it hasn't. There's so many like asterisks and caveats with this, but the oat bran has become kind of like a mainstay in my nutrition, and that was unexpected because I originally bought the oat bran to store because I'm a doomsday bunker person, and so I originally bought that just to store, and then I tried it a few times. I was like, damn, I kind of like this, like, and it's like a perfect way to start the day. And I don't actually feel like waking up and then going to cook a big breakfast. Like that's not really doesn't really feel natural to me. And so making the oat bran in the morning with like some butter and sugar, and then having some milk and coffee or something, and then doing a few calls, and then going to eat like I don't know, an egg or two, or a cheese quesadilla or something with grape juice at the moment. That feels pretty normal to me. And then cycling out oysters and liver and things like that. I have a pretty boring nutrition, but at the same time, I don't have a car. And so we go to Costco like once a month, and I buy a lot of food there, and then I live off of it for a while. So my situation is not ideal in that I can't just go to the grocery store by myself whenever I want. But it's very similar things like the fruits, the milk, cheese, fancy French cheeses when I have the money and things, and just keeping it real simple and delicious. That's one of the more important things, I think.
So after the quesadilla, or whatever you're having for lunch, are you having a dinner too? I'm assuming everybody will want to know the specifics.
Yeah, you got to give us the details.
God. Not really. So I think normally I'm drinking milk, coffee, and sugar basically throughout the day, and I'm not really finding myself often having like a sit down dinner, maybe like a late lunch or something like that. So for example, if I had made oxtail, maybe I have tacos or something with that oxtail meat in the tacos with lime on it or something. But so yeah, again, the things I post on my Instagram, like those are foods I'm still eating to this day, and very very similar. A lot of milk, a lot of coffee, sugar, and juice when it's available. Like for some reason, I can't get good orange juice to save my life, and so grape juice has become this alternative. And but yeah, so it's not that complicated.
Yeah. So the oat bran, I guess, would be the fiber source, but it doesn't sound like you're doing fruits for no fiber.
Yeah, the more juices,
Okay.
because the the way I always thought about the whole fruits is that it'd be hard to get enough carbohydrate eating those all day. So, for example, if I tried to get like 300 or 400 grams of carbohydrate from guavas, I'd be like having to eat them literally all day long, you know. And so the juices is just more convenient for that. Like I think a liter of grape juice has like over 100 grams of carbohydrate, and so it's more of like a convenience thing. And then somebody did make this argument to me. He's like, Danny, haven't you ever seen a chimp eat an orange? Like they'll sometimes like put it in their mouth and spit out the fiber of it, so they'll kind of like juice it in their mouth. So again, I don't really progress those Paleolithic types of arguments, but I thought it was interesting.
I was actually doing that today with my orange for lunch. I'm like, we don't have a squeeze. We don't have orange juice. I kind of want orange. So I just started sucking on the orange pieces. It's actually really more enjoyable that way.
I poop out the weird pulp stuff every single
Yeah,
time. I
like
just don't. I
in
just.
full form, like very clearly and
Oh,
abundant.
you ate an orange yesterday.
Yeah,
Reminder.
yeah.
So yeah.
Okay, so one thing that I think is kind of interesting is the starch component. So at the addition of oat bran, like that is a starch, right? Like that is, and then the tortillas, that is a starch. Um, I think there seems to be quite a few people in the pro metabolic space that like really can't tolerate any level of starches. How has that kind of changed throughout your journey, and what do you think led you to this place of wanting to, like, it sounds like your body actually wants the starches.
I think we should spend a second to talk about pro-metabolic and what it
Uh,
means, like,
okay, fair.
I'm like so really hesitant to ever like,
Jaded.
yeah, I'm super jaded on that word because I think Morley was using that pretty off, or his fans were, or something, and so I think that's. Or, I mean, you would know better than I would. I'm maybe I'm speaking out of turn here,
I
but
think
like,
that yeah, the same group that really focuses on minerals
got
is
it,
more of like the Morley camp, and they do use the term pro-metabolic
got it.
for their dietary guidance. Yeah.
Got that's what I thought, and so I'm just like, whoa, like when we would talk about pro metabolism stuff, it always was rooted back to the pulse and temperature. Like that is the point, to increase the pulse and temperature. That's a good proxy for the thyroid function, and then the details are infinite from there, and you can get as complex as you want. But so that that idea that like a person should just follow a diet and cross their fingers, that's like 10-20 exits away, like we're so far past that. And like straw manning Ray or something and saying like, oh, I ate pro-metabolic and it didn't work for me or something, it's like that's we're way past that. And so that's why I like start having twitches when I hear that word. But again, it's a shorthand. We're trying to explain something that's complex, so I understand using it, obviously. What was the question?
The starch
Oh,
component.
got it,
Yeah.
got it, got
So
it.
how your views like over time, not in the pro-metabolic space, but I guess the more bioenergetic repeat space,
Well,
how
okay.
have they
So
evolved?
to provide some context for maybe we don't have, not everyone that follows us
Oh
are
yeah.
in the quote pro-metabolic space, but Dr. Ray Peat has written extensively before about how starches can be harder to digest, and so as a result, they can stick around longer than ideal in the gut, and then feed microorganisms and cause digestive issues. And so there are a number of people who have experienced relief and improved symptoms from not including starch. But my personal journey, I my body asks for starches every single day, and I think the type and how they're prepared really matters. But curious on kind of how you introduce starches back in.
Yeah, so I was open for anything happen when I using the oat bran, but I think so. Again, you probably know more about this than I do, but I thought the oat bran was mostly fiber, so not like really not much digestible starch. And so I think I had like a day or two of kind of wonky digestion, but it wasn't that bad. Like I have a history of inflammatory digestion, so there's grades of bad digestion that I've experienced. And then it kind of I got over the hump, and I don't notice any problems with it whatsoever. And then the tortillas, there's a company called Ochoa here that I've never noticed any issues from their tortillas basically ever. So it's basically a non-issue. But how I would approach that, if somebody was asking me about starches, which comes up very frequently in the calls, um, I really wouldn't get too complicated with it. If a person really needed them to function and they felt deprived of removing them from their nutrition, I would never tell a person not to eat them. If they were saying, "Hey, I eat starches and it makes my digestion noticeably worse," I'd say try removing them and see how you do, and try finding some carbohydrate source from a fruit or something that you do well with and replacing it. But I think it's actually slightly more complicated, and we talked about this with Ray on one of the generative energy episodes. But I was like, Ray, would a low thyroid person really miss starches because it could possibly help fill in for a lack of liver function? Like the starch has presumably fat on it. It's slowing down the absorption. That's what the liver's supposed to be doing. It's supposed to be um, um, releasing glucose slowly when the blood sugar is too low. And so I was telling him, I was like, so that'd be devastating if a low thyroid person stopped eating starches. And he's like, yeah. And I was like, likewise, is like if the person got their thyroid function higher, could they notice kind of an organic loss of taste for that? And he's like, yeah, that's a possibility too. So again, it's complicated, and I wouldn't make some blanket statement like nobody should be eating starches or something like that.
So along the same thought process there, with a lower thyroid state and maybe a more burdened liver, would you say that somebody might do a little bit better with a higher fat percentage in their diet as opposed to jumping straight into high carb?
I totally think so. Yeah, I think that goes perfectly along with the starches. Um, So again, the point of all this stuff, try to get in touch with yourself as much as possible. And I know that's easier said than done. A lot of people say, "Hey, I don't even know how I feel. I'm immune to everything. I try all this stuff. I don't notice anything." That's like a big problem. It usually seems, in my experience, to stem from the bowel. The person's either horribly constipated or they have some inflammatory digestive problem. And so, yeah, just making blanket statements like people tend to do in the health world. Um, I, I, I think like talking to people humbles you 100,000 times over because you realize how not easy it is for like nothing's easy. Everything's complex, and if you're not including the complexity into the people that you're talking to, you're just doing a disservice to everyone. And so, again, I'm happy to talk to people because I feel like I'm on the front lines and I'm communicating people with like kind of like these devastating problems. And you have to be extremely, in my opinion, like really flexible with your thinking. So if I go into every call and I'm like, nobody should be eating starches, like I just be doing like rampant damage to the people I'm talking to. You know, it'd be a really really bad situation.
From my own personal experience, and just because I know a lot of my condition or the symptoms that I was dealing with for a while here stem from my environment and being pretty toxic. We moved into mold, as we've been very clear about. I do better with higher fat right now, not like a, you know, keto diet, but I do sleep better when I eat a little bit more fat, and I still include the simple sugars. But I've just found that definitely is valid for me, at least. Yeah.
So
100%.
something that Danny just said kind of clicked for me a little bit. You know, again, some nutrition spaces can just be extremely dogmatic, but
Mm-hmm.
you know, like the seasonal eating folk, um, you know, maybe there is something to in the wintertime where our thyroid is known to be suppressed, our metabolism down regulates, we have significantly less sunlight, it's cold. Maybe in that type of environment, a body does do better with a slightly higher fat approach because, like you said, the liver is burdened a little bit and that can help ease the burden off the liver. And then in the summertime, when it's hotter, the liver isn't as down regulated, the thyroid is improved, metabolism is improved. And so then you kind of get to the question of should you do like biohacking in the winter with some thyroid supplementation support, some light therapy, and things like that to improve your tolerance to carbohydrates and fats.
Is that a question?
Nope, just
I
reflecting.
think you could probably use
Nope,
your nutrition too to kind of
absolutely,
mitigate some of that. But
absolutely,
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, I think even with just Ray's suggestion, he always suggests ripe fruit. And so if you're in the middle of winter, like for this is more relevant for us because you're obviously in Mexico, but in the middle of the winter, there's no ripe fruit. I mean, actually, that is orange season, so oranges are ripe.
I eat
But
a lot of marmalade in the winter.
marmalade, that would be
Yeah,
more
I
appropriate.
think I saw one of your guys' videos and it reminded me to try to make it again and not burn it.
Not burn it. Yeah. So you brought up inflammatory bowel. Can you share a little bit more about your experience overcoming your gut issues? I truly believe that gut issues is like almost everybody's problem.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. So after carnivore, so this is like 2009 or 10 or so. Um, I I started drinking raw milk, and it was kind of like a popular thing to do at the time. Like there was a guy named Matt Stone, and he was telling people they should eat like starches and stuff to increase their temperature. And I was like freezing cold, so I was like, there's probably something to this. And I kind of realized pretty quickly that I couldn't digest anything. And when I tried drinking milk, I just had like chronic diarrhea. Like I tried eating starches, have chronic diarrhea. And I think 2 years doing zero carb, like meat and water, just like any semblance of digestive prowess that I had, but like during that time was completely gone. And I basically couldn't digest anything. And at first I thought it was the milk. And so I was like, oh, easy, I'll just remove the milk. And I was like, no, your digestion is still terrible. And then at a certain point, I kind of moved into Ray's stuff, and it was a big problem for me because Ray was talking about milk and orange juice and things like that, but I couldn't digest anything. I was just like running to the bathroom all the time, and again, is probably going to be controversial, but the big game changing thing was, well, first the carrot salad. Like I noticed a little bit of a relief using the carrot every day, and then switching to goat milk that helped a little bit. But one of my first emails to Ray was I had heard him, I think on KMUD, no, another interview, but he had said, long-term digestive damage can be from small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And he kind of listed some symptoms about it, and I was like, that really sounds like what I have. And he mentioned like taking penicillin. And I was like, I've thought antibiotics were the worst things on planet Earth. I preached against using them, but I am so desperate, I will try basically anything. And so, anyways, I think those Mexican pharmacias, I ordered penicillin. I asked Ray which one would be good to order. He helped me. And after 2 weeks, I could comfortably drink goat milk. And I noticed like a clear change. It was so ridiculously obvious to me. And so again, at that point, I was like, what else don't I know? Like I thought antibiotics were the worst thing ever. And I've had this life problem of running to the bathroom diarrhea. And I just solved it in like 2 weeks by taking this thing that I thought was the worst thing ever. So it just made me, again, humbled me that I don't know anything. And so again, that was like the very beginning of getting into Ray's stuff and being like, man, I think this guy actually knows something. And everybody in the health of the world is like fronting like they know something. And I don't think anybody does.
Yeah. So in that period of time that you experimented with the antibiotic for the first time, did you just keep the same diet you were doing before, or did you actually add in these foods?
Yeah, the only thing I did was like milk was a chronic problem for me at the time. So I did remove it
Mhm.
out of the nutrition and I just kind of stayed away from it for a while. And it's kind of funny. So that wasn't like the end of the story. Like I think as different points through like 2012 or 13 or 14 or 15, as I got ill, I kind of revert back to my maldigestion of milk. And so it was something I had to work through. But it was clear after the first time using penicillin that it did solve. Like I was drinking milk without running to the bathroom and having diarrhea. So that was like a huge thing. Um, but yeah, during the first antibiotic course, I removed milk, and I did tolerate Parmesan or Reggiano cheese pretty okay, and so I just included that as a calcium source. But I kind of feel lucky because I talk to people that do have milk maldigestion, and like taking an antibiotic will not solve it for them. And I talked to one dude who took 200 milligrams of progesterone, and that restored his milk maldigestion. And so apparently, progesterone and lactase are linked together. And there's at least one paper on women who get pregnant and then they can tolerate milk, and then one paper on rats or something, and the progesterone inducing lactase. So anyways, your hormones are interact with milk digestion, and so not being able to tolerate any form of milk might be a hormonal problem.
I think something that I've sounds like you have obviously as well. I think I've kind of changed my opinion on antibiotics. I mean, I think it's a different story if we're considering a young child who is getting sick frequently in a time where your microbiome is still developing, where you're still like building bones and you're literally in your adolescent years and relying heavily on antibiotics versus someone in their 20s and 30s or 40s who have dealt chronically with digestive issues for years on end. I think that those are two completely different scenarios. I don't think anyone is pro let's give children as much antibiotics as possible. I mean, I remember growing up I was on Z-Pak for like every single cold that I would ever get. And then the doctor finally was like, you're kind of immune to Z-Pak now. It's not effective. So let's go to the higher dosage. And this was like age 11. So just a time period when heavy antibiotic use shouldn't be used. But for someone that's been dealing with chronic digestive issues for so long, saying these dietary things can be like it's a nice idea in practice, but sometimes digestive issues are like the thing holding someone back in improving their metabolism and thyroid. And it's this negative cycle. And if you can't break out of that cycle, you're never going to improve. And so this gets to the place of I think there is a time and place for antibiotics. There's a time and place for thyroid supplementation for these people who have been dealing with restriction for so long. I mean, you did carnivore diet. We did carnivore diet. We did just extreme restriction for a long time. And if you're in your 96-degree Fahrenheit temperature and can't tolerate anything, sometimes these interventions are necessary to kind of kickstart you in the right direction.
Yeah, well said. And also, it's not to say there aren't legitimately toxic antibiotics. Like that's something else I was fascinated with what Ray was saying. Ray was only comfortable with some of the penicillins, the macrolide family of antibiotics, and then the tetracyclines. And I was like, Ray, why do people feel so harmed by antibiotics? And he's like, well, doctors prescribe too much, too big of doses, and then they have antibiotics with like chlorine in them and stuff. Like there's like really toxic antibiotics, and so and then also like they don't take vitamin K with it, and antibiotics deplete vitamin K, and so I mean, you have to be safe with these things, but you're right. Like, I mean, I could talk about this all day, but like our environment is too toxic to have this like naturalistic fantasy about like only I can only use food to heal my problems, even though I've been damaged like immediately upon exiting the womb. Like, and a bunch of bad stuff happened to me when I was younger that I can never get back, you know. And so feeling like you're limited to just a bad food supply, like not even a good food supply, is I think way too limiting, and I just don't believe in that anymore.
I think an important message for someone to hear is like it's okay to use these type of interventions, because there's these messages of this like supremacist thinking of, you know, food only or food fix only. And so people start to feel like guilty about having to use or other type of interventions. And I think it's like horrible and it's not even an option. But gosh, like you said, talking with people who are struggling, you realize how complex and widespread these chronic issues are. And I think there's a huge difference between someone that's been dealing with an issue for like 6 months versus 6 years. Like for someone that was chronically dealing with digestive issues for most of their life, food is not going to fix it. If you've been having a poor metabolic rate for so long, there's probably so much bacteria that is up inside your small intestine where it shouldn't be. And sometimes doing a little cleanup can really, really help.
Well, fortunately for SIBO, there's like relatively safe antibiotics that are very specific to the small intestine. So it's not like you have to bomb your entire body and have the systemic effects.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Like a person could start with the carrot salad, and then, like I didn't even know about when I took penicillin. I didn't know about the carrot salad because Ray had never even. No, sorry, he didn't talk about the mushrooms. So for some people I've talked to, that the mushrooms seem to work instantaneously, and they didn't even need to take antibiotics. So again, I'm not saying everybody with SIBO or something SIBO needs to take antibiotics. It's more like I don't think it's beneficial to start like wiping the table clean of things that you can't use to feel better. Like, again, not to beat a dead horse, but things are so bad for most people, or at least the people I talk to, that you don't want to just be like, again, removing things, like removing life rafts. You know, it's like, man, you've been in a storm so long, we'll just like limit you to like this half of a life raft, and so it's like you can never get out of it. You know, like it's just you want as many options as possible, safe options, to try to get the person out of the situation, or for them to get themselves out of the situation. And so when you're like, well, you can only eat meat and water, it's like, okay, well, what do I do if that doesn't work? You know, and it's like, well, nothing. Or you like, or I don't even know what they would say to that. So it's just you want options, and different people are going to feel different, more a comfortability factor with different options. So some person might be like, okay, well, I'm only comfortable with the carrot salad, or another person's like, hey, like you said, I've been dealing with this for 10 years and I'm ready to not deal with it anymore, so I'm going to try some penicillin or something. And it's just completely up to the person.
Yeah, along the same lines, and this is relatively within the last 2 decades research, there's this thing called chronic inflammatory response syndrome, CIRS. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. And I think from my own personal experience, I definitely have this because I got the blood work done. I have all the diagnostic testing done, and I've done everything possible to increase my metabolism, but I have not been able to fully heal and reach like this final point in my health journey where I'm not having to use all these different biohacks, you know, to kind of get back to that every once in a while. I really don't think that's what life is about. I don't think it's like, let's go back and do, you know, this new biohack and blah, blah, blah. So, um, I'm not sure this was ever on Ray's radar, but basically the protocol for this inflammatory response syndrome is using more pharmaceutical drugs that help pull these toxins out of your body. It's basically
more potent activated charcoal.
Yeah, it's a binder that attaches to your bile and then you excrete it through your feces. I feel like this is just a prime example of there's a time and place for everything because the environment we live in is so toxic. Like I got into this inflammatory state from living in toxic mold, or the bacteria and the endotoxin that come from and come with mold. So I just think after all of this time being in this nutrition space, and a lot of people's health journey starts with nutrition, I think you get exhausted and you get to this point where you're like, you know what, there are so many other things that are causing these symptoms or they're affecting my health that actually have nothing to do with my food. And again, we all know that food's important. Like, you can just further increase your endotoxin load by what you're eating, or all these different factors. But I just really encourage people at this point, if you've tried everything, to look a little bit deeper into what could be going on, whether that's from your environment, which could be causing your SIBO or your excess bacterial load if you're just swimming in it every single day, or look into using some of these tools. What I would like to say is like Ray Pete's safe supplements. You've done a great post on that, I believe, is like his like 5 or 6 things that are safe,
regarded as safe.
and see if that's gonna help. I just, again, from my own experience here, because I have spent so much money on supplements over the years, so much money. If I could just narrow it down and be like, okay, this is actually going to be effective, let's go with that. Let's do the least harm. Let's just knock it out and then let's move on. So I'm kind of along my own journey there with dealing with CIRS and figuring that out for myself and what that looks like. But yeah, it's just it's almost laughable that for the longest time I thought that I was just going to fix everything with my food.
Yeah, I'm all for trying to just do anything to feel better, as long as the person didn't feel like it was harming them, you know. And so it's again, I used to I used to not take this quote as serious as I do now, but I think it's like a Bruce Campbell quote, and it's like, if the path before you is clear, that means you're on somebody else's, you know. And I explicitly used to be like, well, if Ray just told us everything to eat, like, we'd be good, you know. Like, I wish he just like put out his diet so I could follow it like explicitly. But yeah, it's like, we weren't born with manuals on how to run our bodies. You know, everybody has to figure that out, and that might be akin to like some ancient language that you're like figuring it out as you're living or something. And so, yeah, I'm all about that. The self discovery process is a long one, and you got to do what you got to do to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think that the CIRS, so this CIRS, CIRS, chronic inflammatory response syndrome, I was having a hard time like wrapping my head around, like, why would a body not be able to detox? Like, why would that pass
I guess
down?
I never explained what it is. Basically, there's a subset of the population who has this gene, or a subset of genes
So the
that
gene is
doesn't
something in the environment expresses that gene.
it doesn't recognize the toxin as a toxin, and thus your immune system just goes into this chronic state of inflammatory response.
Accumulation.
And so it leads to brain atrophy. It leads to a whole different subset of symptoms that might not seem related. And from Dr. Richie Shoemaker's research, he shows that if you just go along this protocol, which, yes, calls for drugs, you can basically 100% recover. And so it's it's just interesting, I guess, when you step out of the once you've been in it for a while, the naturopathic world, and you step out for a second, you're like, okay, there's actually, a bigger picture here. There are times when these things can be helpful. It's enlightening in a way, because otherwise it's like you're kind of just like playing with the devil when you're like, let me take this supplement, let me take this one, and then at the end of the day, like, what have you now put into your body that you don't even know?
Yeah. That seems to be anybody, or most of the people I talk to, that I, I think it's, and you've probably seen this too. It's like you go through a phase where I think people get into the repeat stuff and think it's all about supplements or something, and they'll take like every supplement, pro-metabolic supplement that exists, and then stop taking those things. And then I'm talking to them. So it seems like that's pretty common.
So to me, it seems like the CIRS condition like probably didn't exist a while ago, and it's a result of just the environment just being so bad. Like, we are all just inundated with extremely high levels of toxins. And this is something we were talking with Danny about before the call. I went on a trip to Texas last weekend into a city. I had to go through an airport, go on a plane, enter Austin, a very busy city, and like, my body doesn't function well in that like, we live out on a farm, we have chickens, we don't have Wi-Fi in our home, and so I've developed this other type of baseline where I know where I feel good. And then you go to normal civilization and the body is just like extremely sensitive to these things. So Danny, can you talk a little bit about how maybe with some at some point along your health journey, you kind of regain sensitivity to feeling bad?
Yeah. So the thing that got me thinking about this was I talked to, or I've heard for years, somebody would say they were taking the baldness drug Propecia or finasteride. And so that drug radically lowers DHT, which is like a very powerful androgen hormone in men. And often the retort would be like, I'm taking finasteride and I don't notice any difference. And probably a few years ago, I was thinking like, well, if you're radically reducing the main male androgen in the body, you should notice a difference. Like, how do you not notice the difference? It would be like, not the same thing, but it'd be like a woman saying like, I took a drug to eliminate progesterone and I don't notice any difference whatsoever. It'd be like, oh, that's like extremely worrying, you know. And so I had heard that so many times that it got me thinking of like, okay, what is this person's quality of life like? Is it really? It could be really bad, And so maybe the way somebody who paints or sculpts or is like answering like the Schrodinger question of like what is life, etc. They might have like a way higher quality of life than the person that doesn't notice the side effects from the drug. And anyways, that motivated a question that I asked to Ray in one of the Generative Energy episodes. And I was like, Ray, would a person with like a physically larger brain or something notice more defects about their health than a person with a smaller one? And he was like, yes. And then I was like, likewise, would a person with a smaller brain not notice problems with their health? And Ray was like, yes. And so it's almost like if you had I don't know, brain atrophy or something, you might develop this steady state of numbness to your environment. It would probably be protective, to not overstimulate cells, which is what stress does. And but you slip into this coma and not notice anything. But you might think like sitting on Twitter all day is like some great life, when in actuality that's hell. So it's like it's and so again, I'm trying to get to the point of everybody judges their quality of life differently, and so that's why it's so like inane or ridiculous to be like, well, I saw this person on the internet and they say this and they're healthy. It's like, how do you know? Do you go to the bathroom with them? Like, have you spent weeks with them at a time? Like, how do you know what their health is just because of how they present themselves on the internet? Like, I mean, it's just completely ridiculous. So again, everybody has to become their own expert and take everything what you see on the internet with a grain of salt, because it's just a nutty, crazy place, and disconnecting from taking what you need from it and then trying to move away from it as much as possible is probably a good strategy, and just not getting embedded in it because it will destroy a person, I think.
Oh, absolutely. We talked to Georgie yesterday, and he described what I would say is kind of what you're describing is the couch potato, where they don't even really realize that their quality of life is so low. They've just gotten into, well, what he was talking about was low testosterone and male infertility. But basically, this is just this person's new normal. And I'm afraid that the way that our society is going, so maybe us three have been on this long health quest because there was a time in our life when we actually remember feeling good, or we just have now gotten out into nature or something and we realize like there's more to life than, feeling fatigued and crappy and poor digestion, all these different things. And so I'm worried that a lot of people growing up today are going to have a baseline that's actually crappy. And so there isn't going to be this like big quest to feeling better because that's just what is like the life experience at a certain point.
Yeah, that is really true.
It's kind of sad. Like I don't even know. You don't have to respond. I'm just sad
Yeah.
about it.
But the thing is, I bet there's a level of quality of life that's been robbed from us. It's
Yeah.
I am at like my friend who's 80 years old talks about his life growing up, and he's like, yeah, my brothers and I, we used to go play tennis, and then we'd race each other home, and the last person home had to do dishes, and like we'd see the milkman and the egg man and stuff, and his life sounds like a Dick Van Dyke show or something. Like it sounds like it sounds so like a TV show, and again, I got to experience a little bit of that. Like I was born in 1985, so I remember a time before technology and like riding bikes with my friends and stuff. But I did talk to somebody who was 17, and I think he heard me talking about this on an interview, And he's like, dude, all I know is growing up on the internet. Like, I don't know anything
Mhm.
else. I didn't even have a time before this. And all my friends are on the internet. I've like never met most of them, etc. And so again, but to take it a step further, like I know somebody that was taking two SSRIs when they had their for their pregnancy, and their doctor
Oh,
they told them that that was safe. So it's I mean, the damage being done to kids now is probably way worse than
did
what
you
happened to
watch
us.
that Jeffrey Dahmer I'm guessing you didn't. It was like a little documentary show.
No, it
His
isn't.
mom was on just a series of SSRIs,
Oh, well.
and so it kind of just paints a picture of, like, what could possibly happen, you know?
That's like a thing that shooters and stuff will be full of meds, among other things with
Mhm.
them. But yeah, that yeah, like I think there's some famous trial or something where somebody that did something horrific sued, I don't remember, Pfizer or Merck or something, and their description of themselves was they like lost all contact with reality and they felt numb to everything and stuff. So,
Oh god.
and so yeah, I mean, we could talk about the harms of SSRIs all day.
Uh, well, that's a depressing topic in terms of, some things are just out of our control. And I think living in cities is definitely going to be harder to navigate these things. But Danny, what would you give advice? Let's say you, for some reason, had to move back to the States. So Danny's in Mexico, and you had to go live in New York or live in downtown Chicago or live back in California. Like, how can people, most people are forced into these situations. It's just their job, their family, their life is there. What is the best way to navigate this kind of horrific environment without losing all hope?
Yeah, I think the thing to do would to be start with easy things that you could affect instantly. So, for example, you have to eat. So, just like making small modifications in your food and stuff, that would probably be helpful. And if the main problem with EMF is that it forces too much calcium inside of cells, like just getting via the parathyroid hormone or something like that, then just getting a baseline of calcium every day could like hypothetically affect a person's um, amount of harm of EMF to a person. Um, sorry, my door's not. Um,
Sounds like
so
a dungeon.
yeah, yeah. So just doing simple things, but also like maybe a secondary thing would be turning off Bluetooth on your computer or using Ethernet cables and things like that. Like that's not that hard. Like every Airbnb I would go to, I type in 192.168.1.1 and go into the router settings, turn off the Wi-Fi, and then you and plug in.
Can you repeat that?
It's 192.168.1.1. And
Okay.
some routers will have a different address, but that's like a pretty universal address for most routers. And then it will show you admin and password. And then if you flip the router upside down, it will usually have the admin and password on the bottom of it, like the default one. And and I forgot to mention, you have to be plugged in via Ethernet to be able to do this. But you can log into the router and then turn off the Wi-Fi of the unit. And so again, I would do that every single time I'd go to an Airbnb, and I'd carry a big long Ethernet cord in my bag. And and the thing is, you got to remember to turn it back on after you leave. But and I even do that in like a
Or not.
condo. Yeah, yeah, exactly. I do that in like a condo where I was surrounded by Wi-Fi and cell phones and stuff, just out of
So,
habit. Oh, go ahead.
is this so you could still use the Ethernet, but you wouldn't have the Wi-Fi? Because couldn't technically somebody just turn off the entire thing?
Say
Is
again.
that what you were saying? So
That
couldn't technically somebody just turn off the entire, like, unplug and turn off the entire router? Or did you do this so you could have the Ethernet still?
So I could still have the Ethernet. Like if I just
Okay.
unplug the router, I wouldn't have internet, basically.
Okay, I'm
this
thinking
is
because
what
I'm definitely gonna be doing this, but I'm thinking my fiance is gonna think I'm absolutely insane, so I might just unplug it.
this is what we did at our house.
Yeah,
We
no, no, we don't have correct. We don't have
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
We still have a
We
box
have cords everywhere.
of cords everywhere.
Same with me. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's great advice. So the low-hanging fruits, eat good food, maybe stop all the constant exposure to the Wi-Fi and the EMF.
And then if a person wanted to go further than that, I think it is good to invest in an EMF meter or something. And the reason I say that is, say one room in your house was being like blasted by a tower or something. And if with a meter, at least you could know that and go sleep somewhere else, you know? And then you could make it more real to yourself. Like say you noted that and you slept in another room, you felt way better. And then the whole thing becomes real, you know, it becomes more grounded and less of an
Mhm.
ethereal kind of like hypothetical. And so, and again, that's more advanced, but I would recommend doing something like that.
I learned recently that animals will not stand under electrical big units or towers. And so it just seems like the human has gotten extremely conditioned to just accept this state of just constant electrical interference, whereas animals are like a little bit rejecting it, which seems a little bit more ancestral.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm,
great
I'm,
So,
term.
I mean, you
I'm,
can learn so much from
Danny's
animals.
favorite term.
I'm all about ancestral consistency, so I agree. I totally agree. Um, yeah. Again, I'm hesitant to even say this, but I think I'm positive I can feel it, and I have a. Oh, maybe I'll just tell it real fast. But I used to have an office that was I made into a Faraday cage. So again, the signal was really low. And my landlord was like, Danny, we're sending somebody into your office to mess with the modem because we need to do something at our house because I lived on a small casita on the side. And I was like, okay. And so I was answering email and the technician was in the room with me. So again, we're in a Faraday cage and I'm answering the email and I'm like, oh my God, my neck hurts like so bad. What is going on here? And I'm like, oh, whatever. And I start answering the email. And anyways, like over 30 minutes, my neck becomes like more intense, like really anxiety, like not anxiety, like tightness, tension. And while I'm answering email, and then I look over and I realize the technician had turned on the Wi-Fi. And so it's
Oh,
kind of like
wow.
a blind thing that I didn't know the Wi-Fi was on. I clearly felt some negative tension that I wasn't used to while answering email. And I was like, oh, well, we're in a Faraday cage, and he turned on the Wi-Fi. And so,
Oh,
anyways,
no.
yeah,
Oh, don't be in a Faraday cage when the Wi-Fi is turned
yeah.
off.
Oh, geez.
So that made it more
I
real to me when I did that.
Definitely.
I would add another thing. I think that something I didn't realize growing up, but now I'm 30, and I think a really important thing is, like we touched on in the beginning, is learning a new skill, because I think that it can distract you from all of the nonsense that's happening. And so if you're in a city, going to take singing lessons or guitar lessons or painting or learning how to knit or sew or something that you have zero skill on, and just that little bit of joy you receive each time you improve in something, it just helps you live life and experience life a little bit more. And I think that that's lost. And so get back to that like child creativity by forcing yourself into situations where you suck at something and just learn how to improve. And that's what we were talking about with like taking care of chickens. None of us, I didn't have a chicken growing up. We didn't know what we're doing. Who cares? And seeing improvements over time has just been so rewarding and adds to the quality of life, improves the internal hormonal state inside of your body as you experience happiness.
I often wonder or wish that we could be like how to learn how to play piano YouTubers or something, because I feel like everybody in the nutrition space just gets to this point of exhaustion because it's like, you know what, the same thing's not going to work for everybody. Everything gets taken out of context. So like, can I just change my field?
I think that's wonderful advice,
Yeah.
and again, in a time where things are so uncertain, developing new skills couldn't be more important, you know? And
Hmm.
so, like all these digital skills are going to be, in my opinion, useless in a few years. And so it's,
AI is going to take it over.
yeah.
Yeah. So something that you said in the beginning has stuck with me. And so I want to know the answer before we end. What are your quote big plans for chickens?
Uh, I think I
Oh
want to get
yeah.
in your business. I think I kind of joked about wanting to be a chicken farmer. And when I was driving back from the getting the 15 new chicks, I've never told really anybody this, but I was like, I think I want to like spread Ray's message through selling eggs. Like I think that would be, and I got like a graphic in my brain of the box, like and everything started like instantly making, it was almost like a pseudo religious experience, like driving back with these chickens. And so again, that's probably a few years out, but I really do want to do that. Uh, Even if I made like no money at all, I don't think I'd care. I just want to do it for kind of for myself, and I want to make like the best tasting egg. Like that would be my goal, and then everything else would come second. And so, anyways, I and that correlated with like this huge. I mean, talk about failures. The first question you said, growing trees has been a gigantic failure. Like
Oh,
ants
that's hard.
in this area will take down any tree. And the moment I knew that I failed was I put this goopy like organic stuff on the base of the tree so the fire ants couldn't walk up. The fire ants put down leaves on the goopy stuff to walk past it, and then
They're absurdly strong.
yeah, cut down every single leaf on the tree. And I was like,
They
man,
built a bridge.
yeah,
They built a leaf bridge.
exactly. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take this area. I'm going to put a fence around it. I'm going to put nets over it, and I'm going to get hundreds of chickens in here. And that was like my new goal. So again, that's probably a few years out, but I do want to do that.
It sounds like you need to partner with Angel Acres and be the egg distributor in Mexico.
In Mexico,
That's
let's talk
basically
about
what we
this.
do,
Yeah.
with the low PUFA eggs,
Yeah.
which a lot of people say they're low PUFA, like they do the corn and soy free, but
Don't get me started on the corn and soy free. It's like the pro-metabolic term.
then
I hate
replace
it so much.
other high PUFA ingredients. So
Yeah, their feed contains sunflower seeds or
Oh well.
flaxseed. It's like there's PUFAs.
so
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah, I sense possibly a chicken podcast in our future if you guys want.
Yeah.
strictly on chickens. I like it.
So Danny, I think that you are going to experience extreme gratification when you hand someone their first dozen eggs. I have a vivid memory. Kathy, if you listen to this, Kathy was in our driveway. I handed her the first dozen of eggs. It is an insane experience. You are literally providing nutrients for someone. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I love it.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to really enjoy it. And don't wait a few years. Just start. Like just start giving or selling to a few people in your area.
Got it. I mean, the infrastructure for it is going to be like, for example, letting them free range on the property is basically a death sentence. Like there are too many dogs roaming around. And so in beginning of May, we're having a fence put around the entire property. So that's like number one, really important. And then number two, there's a big area that I want to do another fence around and then put in poles and then nets over it so hawks can't go down. And so so again, I have my own little setup that's not really that big, and sometimes I feel bad for having them in there and stuff. But what I want to do is so like grandiose. It's going to take a lot of capital and money, and so I think it'll probably be like $15,000.
I will
Fencing is
say,
expensive.
I will say, trying to make your setup mobile will make your life so much easier with chickens.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Whatever
jealous
you
of
can.
what I've extensively looked at what you guys have, and it's absolutely amazing.
I don't even know if I could explain how many times we have failed though. Like it has.
This is, I think we talked about this at the beginning a little bit, but this is an extremely traumatic hobby because nature is rough.
Yeah.
One of the chickens I had just over a course of about a month became paralyzed, and it was. I actually have many questions for you two about this, but like I really I threw every single thing at it. I gave it lots of progesterone. I even tried giving it thyroid. I tried everything I possibly had, and nothing dented it.
I have a view on this now, and this is kind of my like 10-year plan. I've listened to kind of every conversation between Danny and Georgie where you talk about your chickens because that's my favorite thing.
Let me just add in, it's soothing. I love your podcasts that aren't about nutrition.
I don't care about nutrition. I just want to hear you guys talk about chickens.
This is relaxing.
So whenever I hear you guys talking about, okay, I'm going to turn this on louder here. I've listened to Danny, and one thing that you said was like, as soon as a chicken gets sick, it goes downhill real quick.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a point of they can't, like, there's nothing that you can do. And Danny, I've seriously I've seen that countless times. And I honestly think we're going to have to hatch our own. So we're going to have roosters, hens, and they're going to just have to develop this breed that does well in our context. And I think that that's the only way. Obviously, what they eat, what they're exposed to, getting sunshine is important, and having a clean living environment. But regardless of what you do, some just get sick. And I really think it's going to have to be we develop genetics that work well for our context.
Yeah, again, I mean, you really feel helpless. It's like, man, I threw everything I had at this chicken and it didn't make a dent in it. And
Yeah.
the one thing I could say is that paralysis, and again, I've seen the paralysis happen multiple times, but the paralysis happened after a really hot day, and that one seemed like it was experiencing some bad level of heat stress. And so again, I don't know that much about it, but like I did read a little bit, and again, Ashley, you could probably speak to this more. But like I thought, um, doesn't the heat stress like open up their intestine and allow maybe like bacteria or something to affect their central nervous system or something like that? Like
Yeah, people think that chickens do bad in cold, but extreme heat actually does a lot of internal damage, like you said.
Because I noticed diarrhea first before I ever noticed the paralysis, and I was like, something's going on with the intestine. But
Endotoxin load.
yeah,
Systemic endotoxin.
that's what I thought. But
So maybe we should give him a little carrot salad and some activated charcoal. Those are two things I haven't tried.
Yeah. Well, I've done that quite a few times, but it when it was already showing signs of it, it was not helping at all. So again,
Yeah.
there's that quote by I can't remember who, but it's like it's easier to make strong children than fix broken men, and so it's like easier to make strong chicks than fix broken hens, I think. And so that
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. But wow, that applies to humans society
Yeah,
too. And
Mhm.
us talking about like how you sometimes need stronger interventions to fix after chronic years of suffering from something.
100%.
Okay. Well, we'll have to do another chicken podcast. That'll be I can talk about chickens all day long, and I'm sure
Mhm.
most of our audience doesn't care.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, all 3 of these people really like
Yeah.
chickens. So Danny, what would be a takeaway point for the audience in terms of not losing hope in dealing with things chronically?
I mean this from the bottom of my heart, but there's always hope. And there are even, I mean, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but even people I've talked to where I was like, man, that person has a lot going on. I don't know if they'll ever figure out this stuff. And I talked to them 3, 4, or 5 months later, and they'd be like, okay, so I'm taking thyroid, I'm taking aspirin, and like they'd like the initial call would just be like total clusterfuck. Like it would be very difficult, you know. And so again, I'm trying to say there's absolute hope for any situation, and taking things slow and like integrating things that make sense and rejecting things that don't make sense, I think is the way to go. And it's not to say that the things that don't make sense right now might not make sense later. And so again, just trying to move slowly, like you said earlier, like just moving in a direction, and you're going to get some hiccups in the way, you know, but you'll move past them.
Yeah, I think that was wonderful. I mean, it kind of goes back to Ray's like basic you got to escape this learned helplessness and realize you have so many different options and just do what makes sense at that moment. Whether there's a little bit of intuition left there, follow that.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, thanks so much for coming on today. We definitely will do a part 2 just about chickens. Get the
Anytime.
lowest views.
Anytime.
I don't care. Welcome to the Strong.Sistas after party, where we recap on the conversation, talk about kind of our main takeaways and our favorite parts of the conversation. So, Sarah, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. So I one of the greater things that I appreciate about Danny is that he really isn't dogmatic about nutrition. And even though he might be in a particular space, if you listen to more of his interviews, he's really open for discussion on things and he recognizes there's a ton of nuances in different nutritional theories and what's going to work for somebody may not work for somebody else. So I feel like there's a lot of value in picking his brain since he has been in this space for so long and he's really worked closely with Ray Pete, or at the very least, he's talked closely with him and been in communication, in the past. And from Danny, the greatest value that I derive from his work, I think, is that he really represents this thought process of avoiding learned helplessness. And I think he brings a lot of hope to people because he can offer very simple solutions to problems that might seem very complex. And so that to me is very therapeutic, because if you are trying to put the pieces together of a puzzle, and the puzzle is your health, and you haven't even started, it can be extremely scary. And so I think that Danny's very good at having this like start here. I really appreciate that kind of approach where it's like just do one thing. So I know a few of those he mentioned was, obviously approach your nutrition wisely, get out from, constant EMF and Wi-Fi exposure as much as possible. Those are two like pretty low hanging fruits. Now, obviously, there's a ton of nuances there.
I've heard Danny say a number of times that he feels like he doesn't even do anything for people. So Danny works one on one with people and works directly with people, which is a very humbling experience because you realize like how many wide variety of issues there are out there. And so I've heard him say that in the past, but I would say that what he does and kind of some of the things that we do in our course is extremely valuable because it's something that we should have as humans, but it's missing from current society because problems aren't talked about. You go to therapy or you go to a doctor, and we should have these type of discussions of how to better problem solve things that we're experiencing at a young age. And instead, society kind of promotes this more, I don't know, suppress your symptoms kind of thing with therapeutic drugs, or there's not really like more discussions on these problems. And so I think it's a missing piece of what we all need. It's ultimately community.
What do you mean, like just talking about things?
Talking about your
Oh, yeah.
problems, at looking like figuring out possible steps forward, like other things to try. Like that is definition of a community that helps problem solve together.
Yeah, sometimes when you bring up something to somebody that you're going to for help, you're almost solving it yourself, because you're bringing up these things that you've it's like your intuition is speaking, and it's like you had all the pieces, you just need somebody to put it together. You needed somebody to give you the go ahead or the confirmation. And maybe that's the value there, is like people come to him, they've got an issue, but they bring it up themselves and they kind of walk themselves through it. And he's there to be like, yeah, or, kind of maybe hold their hand. But that's not to say there's not a ton of other value and input that he
Oh,
provides.
he has experienced so much in his life, and I think learning about his journey and how much he overcome in terms of the digestive issues is extremely powerful because there you now see so many people who have to go to extremes to see relief, and that in the end isn't truly living life. There's a lot of vitamin P missing from like not enjoying cuisine, enjoying traditional quote ancestral cuisines and
Well,
things like that. So seeing him overcome those digestive issues, I think in itself is valuable to hear about because it provides hope.
yes, I agree. So let's talk about the nutrition component, because I do think there's even more nuance there when you say like there's vitamin P, but that's not to say that somebody who might follow what somebody believes is a restrictive diet, that they're not deriving pleasure from it, because sometimes feeling good and not having to deal with your symptoms is pleasure. And so you
That's
kind of
fair.
have to figure that out for yourself.
Find that middle
And
ground.
yeah, and so that's going to look different along different points of your journey. And so I think that's important to that was an important part of the interview, because he talked about how he did not tolerate milk for a while. And you might be somebody who truly believes like you've gotten into this bioenergetic race space and you're like, oh, I have to drink milk, but you're not tolerating it. Then that's not a food that's therapeutic for you at this time until you work something else out. And so we think about his diet a little bit more. He mentioned grape juice, and maybe that's what he's drinking right now, but maybe there's orange juice at different times, or there's, what do you say, 400 carbs worth of guava, which I know he's kidding. This amount, I would not go and replicate this in your day tomorrow, because I think that's the trouble with doing full days of eatings, because that Danny has gotten himself to a place where this is what his body is thriving on, and this is what he tolerates well, and this fluid amount and this amount of carbs is what actually keeps his body temperature up, which is his goal, right? And that's usually the goal when we're thinking about the bioenergetic space. And I think that gets lost maybe when we're just thinking about like specific foods to eat, because not every food you eat is going to have or elicit that same response on your metabolism. And so finding what that looks like for you, and I brought up my example of I actually find that I do better with the higher fat, and I still include carbs, and I obviously have protein in. But right now, the part of my health journey I'm in that's supportive of my metabolic rate, that's supportive of maintaining my blood sugar. So just recognizing that it's always good to just, it's good to hear these things, but you have to put it into context of within your whole own life and where you are at in your journey, instead of following a subset of rules that probably were not made for you.
Yeah. And I will say that like subset of rules can be helpful for some people who are just clueless, and they just it's a starting point.
Yeah.
You know, like a structure that someone needs.
Yeah. So that's probably what were we even talking about? Biggest takeaways?
Biggest takeaways.
Yeah. So what would be action items for somebody to derive from this episode? If you're like, what'd you guys even talk about? You went all over the place. What would you say is an action item?
Using body temperature and pulse to see if the actions that you're taking are moving your health in the right direction. So that kind of allows you to move past dogma or rules and instead really dial in and focus on actually what is working for you, and using symptom relief, sleep, energy, body temperature, and pulse as a way to like move forward.
Okay. What about somebody who is dealing with digestive issues?
I think analyzing how long you've dealt with those digestive issues is a critical component in determining the best steps forward. Dr. Repeat has talked a lot about the antiseptic fibers in carrots, mushrooms, and bamboo shoots. And for some people, those fibers, which aren't really digested by the body and they are instead just form bulk in your stool, they can help grab bacteria and toxins through your intestine. And just the act of doing those repeatedly for 2 to 3 weeks can help clean up the intestinal environment. And that in itself will improve how you digest food, because overgrowths of any kind can cause inflammation along the gut barrier. They can reduce the amount of enzymes that are produced in your gut, such as the lactase enzyme. And so that simple step may help move your digestion in the right direction. However, for other people who have been dealing with gut issues for years and years and years, so chronically, sometimes little stronger interventions are necessary, and you shouldn't feel bad about that, because if it helps relieve your body and it gives your body the space it needs to heal, that in itself is a win.
Yeah, I think that's good. Sorry, I was looking up on my phone. Uh, toxins emitted in the air when pig manure is laid. Because right now in this room, you guys, our whole house smells like pig manure because we live obviously in an agricultural zone, and the field across from us, they are laying pig manure, which I think, has benefits, but they're laying pig manure to grow their crops. But for like an entire week every spring, it smells like pig manure.
It's so
everywhere.
bad. You walk outside, it's so bad.
It's like, it's hard to breathe. And so I looked it up, and it's hydrogen sulfide, methane, ammonia, and carbon dioxide. So
carbon dioxide is not a poison.
Yeah, but I mean, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about in this episode, where like there are some things in the environment that are actually extremely toxic to your body. And if we only look at food at this point in our world and our society, then we're really missing a lot of huge components to overall health. And so you can't escape these things. So you really have to consider what's going to set your body up for success when it comes to dealing with these environmental toxins. And so I know that, and I know and appreciate the metabolic rate and its critical role, all the different organs associated with this in detoxifying. But there are some situations where it can be too much for the body, and that's what's actually shutting down the metabolic rate. So I like bringing this topic to the conversation all the time because it's personal to me, and I just hope to encourage somebody to look a little bit deeper. If, like Ashley said, maybe you've had this digestive problem for so long, you've tried everything, or you've had other things going on and nothing else has brought relief to it, look a little bit deeper.
When in doubt, you can count on Sarah bringing up the environment.
I know.
When in doubt, you can count on Ashley bringing up body temperature and pulse, because I have a vivid memory of measuring my body temperature when we were carnivore, and it was 96.4 or 5 degrees, and that was just a huge wake up call. So yeah, these important moments in your life, they stick in you and are monumental for you.
But I will say I've had body temps of 98.6 for a period of time, and it didn't solve everything because I wasn't always considering holistically.
Hey, girl, I ain't dying the environment.
This is what I'm trying to explain to people is like, okay, one, and there's no final destination. You know, like you're not going to get to perfect body temp and thyroid health and be perfect. Like there's always going to be things that creep in. There's going to be periods of stress. You're going to be exposed to things. So that's just where you have to be set up for success in your overall routine. However,
you have to be rooted in resilience.
Yes.
All right. Until next time, stay rooted in resilience.
I think the grieving part is part of the process. You kind of got to go through that, but then you have to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and take action. So take action. If this is something that you are, really like a strong feeling this could be something for you, and remember, 25% of the population is susceptible, has that gene. So I wouldn't put it past you if you've tried everything, you're dealing with chronic illness, and you cannot get better.
All right. Well, with that, until next time, guys, stay
Rooted in resilience.